All right. Well, good evening, guys. Throttle up back our Bible study in the house. That that's fine. Fine. There was nothing wrong with you asking to move up here. That's fine. It's all good. All good. So tonight we're gonna continue in the book of Genesis, and we're gonna do chapter 15, and we may even get into chapter 16. We shall see. We shall see. But just again, like I always do, a quick recap. This is Moses writing about the beginning of the world, right? All the way up through where we are with the story of Abram right now. So this is hundreds of years before Moses, right? He's writing this because God put this on him to write. So this is the book of Bereshith. We talked about that many times. The first book of Moses in the Torah, right? And it's the history of the world, not part one, but the history of the world, the real one, right? You don't want to get that reference, I know. But it's okay. So let me open us up in a word of prayer, and we'll start talking about the covenant between God and Abram. All right? Heavenly Father, Lord God, again, we thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us. Father, we thank you for another day, Lord, that we can be tools for you to use. We can be the vessels in which you pour into. And we can be the light that shines because of you for others to find you. Father, not for our benefit, but for theirs. Not for our glory, but for yours. But for everything that you're doing to us, through us, and for us in this place, we thank you. In Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen. So last week, in Genesis chapter 14, Abram had to go down and rescue Lot, right? Because all those city kings got together and captured all the people of these other cities with their kings and their stuff, right? And then as they were making their way back home, Abram and his 318 men, now plus Lot and all of his servants and all their cattle and all that good stuff, and they got up there, and the one king came out and thanked them and tried to give them, well, one gave them food and water, right? And the other one tried to give them all these possessions. And Abram said, no, give the men what they had to eat, right? And then for these other kings, divide up these people. But he said, I don't want anything. Well, that was pretty cool, right? He was doing what God had told him. And you would think, after all that time, he would get it. That he would still understand whatever God says is what I have to do, but he doesn't. And that's what we'll see tonight. So Genesis chapter 15. Let me get this pulled up here so I can control the screen up there. TUBBS, Genesis 15, verse 1. So again, I read out of the ESV, so if the King James says something different, let me know. But here we go. So it says that after these things, what things? All that stuff where Abram had to go down and rescue Lot, right? From all that, plus everything before that. That's what you have to remember. Whenever the Bible uses words like so then or after this or whatever, it means everything that happened up until that point. So from the flood on, right? Everything that's happened to Abram is what he's talking about here. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am your shield, your reward shall be very great. Now remember, Abram's old, right? We know that he was 75 and didn't have any children before all of this started. And this is years later, right? So he's probably about 90 right now. We're guessing. There's no mention of it, but that's what we're guessing. So he's 90 years old. God has promised him that he will be this great guy with a lot of things, right? If we go back to, we'll see it in a minute. But if we go back, we can read where God keeps promising him things, right? But Abram keeps making mistakes. Well, guess what? He's going to make another one here in a few minutes. So let's go to verse 2 then. Verse 2 says this. It says, "But Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus." That's a servant. So, God, you keep promising me all this stuff for all of my offspring. I don't have any. I don't have any offspring. So everything's going to go to my servant. Right? It's like, now he's not dreaming here. It said it's a vision. So he's awake. You need to keep that in mind, because in a minute it'll tell you he's going to go to sleep. But right now he's awake and he sees this vision, and God's telling him, this is about to happen. Okay, how many times do we go through life and we know that something's going to happen, but we don't pay attention to it? Okay, and we don't have as close a relationship, and I say that humbly because it comes from my heart as well, as Abram would have had, who has walked with God, right? Right? All right, so verse 3. Verse 3 says this. "And Abram said, Behold, you have given me no offspring, and a member of my household will be my heir." Remember, household means anything, not just the house itself. It's the servants. It's everything. Okay, that's the way it goes. So Abram's going, you keep telling me, but I'm not going to listen because I don't see it yet. I don't see it. Keep that focus. I don't see what you're talking about. Verse 4. "And behold, the word of the Lord came to him." Now, does the King James say it exactly the same way, the word of the Lord?
Word of the Lord.
Well, that's fine, but it's the word, right? But I want to point one thing out. Notice that W is not capitalized. That's important. So this is the speech of God, not the Son of God coming to him. When you read John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and that word is capitalized. That's because it's speaking directly of Jesus. All right. So, "And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying," my word, "This man shall not be your heir. Your very own son shall be your heir." He's like, dude, I've already told you you're going to have kids. You are. Right? But he still doesn't get it, because in verse 5, it says this. "And he brought him outside and said, Look toward heaven and the numbers of stars, if you were able to number them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be." And we've heard something like that before, right? Do you remember? Back in chapter 13, it says this. Let me turn back here real quick. It's not going to be on the screen, but here we go. In chapter 13, it says, starting in verse 14, "The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him," this is God speaking to Abram, "Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, eastward, westward." That's not it. It is. "North and east and west. For all the land you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever." But verse 16 says, "I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust on the earth, your offspring shall also be counted." And here he's saying, look up into the stars. If you can count the stars, that's how many children you're going to have. Or your offspring, not necessarily children, but your offspring. Your descendants. Right. Everybody okay with that? So this 90-year-old dude is sitting there talking to God, and God's saying, it's coming. Are you ready? You know, you think it's bad enough for us changing diapers now? Yeah, they were fig leaves. Oh, no, fig leaves already passed. Anyways, deerskin. All right, so here is, where are we, 6? Oh, that's end of verse 5. You didn't see that. But there we go. Verse 6. Verse 6 then says this. And he believed the Lord. So, and he, Abram, believed the Lord, and he, God, counted it to him, Abram, as righteousness. So Abram believes him, right? I'm going to have all these kids. This is great. And God said, all right, you're finally getting it, right? No, he still doesn't get it. He still doesn't get it. Because watch what happens in 7. And he, Abram, said to him, God, and God said to Abram, I am the Lord who brought you from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. Remember, he brought Abram out of the mess that he was in and took him and said, all the land you can walk across, east to west, all the land north to south, it's all going to be your descendants' land, right? I brought you out of the mess you were in so that you could have all of this, which is now Israel, right? But watch what happens. Still doesn't get it. But he, this is Abram, said, O Lord God, how am I to know that I shall possess it? Just because you, God, are trying to give it to me, how do I know that I will possess it? If God's going to give you something, it's going to be yours, right? Uh-oh. Because he questions God's will. Remember, God had just said it's to the righteousness of Abram that he believes me. And the first thing he does is he questions God. How do I know it's going to be mine? Verse 9. Verse 9 then says, he, God, said to him, Abram, bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Nowhere does it say partridge in a pear tree, but that every time I read it, that's where my mind goes, right? So bring me a 3-year-old cow, a 3-year-old goat, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. And a ram. Sorry, I missed the ram, right? Okay. And Abram, brought him God all these, cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other. But he did not cut the birds in half. They're little. Right? But you got this big cow, cut in half, folded back together. A ram, cut in half, folded back together. He's doing this, even though it doesn't say, it's an altar that he's doing this on. Okay? We have to believe that's what this is. Because watch what happens next. And when the birds, not next, but in a minute. And when the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Don't let these birds of prey peck at the perfect meat that you've laid out for God. Okay? Like our lives, when we lay something down for God, we can't let others influence us to pick it back up. Okay? Now, that's not what he's talking about here, but that's what I feel when I see this. And you should have felt the things I felt Monday morning. Sunday we had that great meal, right? All that trash was laying out here in the driveway because the dog from up on the hill came in at midnight, turned it over, drug it all out. That's not what this is talking about. But that's what it reminds me of, because that was a situation I had to say, God forgive me, put it all back in the trash can and let it get taken away. Yeah, last night I did it again, but that's a different story. That was different trash. There's a hole in the fence, and you can hear it on the camera. The camera sees him, notifies me, and all that good stuff, and you can hear the fence rattle. So I moved a piece of old fence over in front of it today to see if I can keep him out. But it's the brown dog that lives right here on top of the hill. So, anyway, so where are we? Verse 12. As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, a dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. So all this time before, he had the vision, and then he was talking directly with God. He was awake. But now, he falls asleep. In the Bible, when it says that someone falls asleep, something major is about to happen, right? Ask Adam. Yeah. And it still amazes me how from one rib God made a loudspeaker that's just gone on forever and ever and ever. Anyway, so that's just one of those things. It's true. Anyway, so verse 13. I'm getting the death stare now. Yeah, but it's worth it. Anyway, verse 13. Then the Lord said to Abram. Now, why is it that sometimes it'll tell you who's saying it to who, and other times you have to pay attention, right? Because this one's important, right? So then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be, and the word here is sojourners. How does King James? Strangers, right? So there's a difference in the way that word looks. What that means is they will be travelers across a land they are not familiar with. Okay? So it says that they will be sojourners or strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and there they will be, what's the word here? Afflicted. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. And they will be afflicted there for 400 years. Stop. Do you have any idea what he's talking about? Right. In a land that is not theirs. Everybody catch that? They will be in servitude for 400 years in a land that does not belong to them. Do you know what he's talking about here? Slavery where? No. Way on down the line, Egypt. Moses led the people out of Egypt after 400 years of slavery. Right? So here he is, Moses, writing about what God said to Abram before he got him out of Egypt. It hadn't happened yet, right? So he's telling that we're going to be in this servitude for 400 years, even though we're in the middle of it and we don't know when it's going to end. Yeah, that's why I bring it up every time. Who wrote this? This is the first book of Moses. So Moses is writing, there's that word again, anachronistically, about what's happening to them now because he's going to lead them out of Egypt. And it's the descendants of Abram that were captured and taken to Egypt, which is a land that was not theirs, and made to be servants. Once again, you got to look. Sometimes you just have to step back and go who, what, when, where, and why, so that you really start to understand. This is so cool. You know, you're not only are you going to have kids, you're going to have descendants, but they're going to be captured, they're going to be enslaved, and they're going to be that way for 400 years. Now, it wasn't just a couple of generations before that'd be half your life. People were living over 900 years. Well, foretelling this story, I will look back and say, yeah, everybody that was in Egypt died before they got back to the Promised Land.
Well, I mean, before he...
Right.
Wasn't it everybody of adult?
Yes. Yes. The question wasn't it everybody that was of adult age? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. But it's going to come back into play here in just a second. So hold that thought in your head. Watch what happens. Where are we? 14? Verse 14 says this. It says, but this is God speaking again, but I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve. Once again, that's Egypt. Right? Okay, keep that in your head. And afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Right. All the stuff that they had, that they took because the Pharaoh finally said, enough, get your people out of here, because he had been afflicted so many times, right? So they went out with great possessions. We don't know that yet, but that's what he's telling them. This is going to happen, okay? So he's foretelling, oh, by the way, your great grandkitty will have we'll have more gold than you can carry. That's a Fred word, right? So it doesn't say that. But you get the idea, right? 15. As for yourself. Oh, hey, Abram, by the way, for yourself, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age. Oh, by the way, Abram, you ain't going to get none of this. Wait, you remember a minute ago I said hold that thought where you said that's the first time he started to question God? There it is. God said, exactly, when you start questioning God, he's going, he never changes his mind. He always puts a plan in place and says, if you do this, then this. Well, he didn't do that, so he didn't get this. So that's what he's saying. You're going to die an old man with nothing, but you'll be happy. Okay, I can deal with that. I'll be happy, right? I'll be old and I'll be happy. Got all these kids and these grandkids and kitties, right? 16. And they shall come back here being the land that God showed Abram, which is Israel, and they shall come back here in the 4th generation. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Stop. You remember Sunday I talked about iniquity? And I say that some people think that it means illness or sickness. It does not. It means sin. So here it's saying, the sins of the Amorites, which are all the people that you are leading right now, is not yet over. They haven't fulfilled their failure yet. Okay. A lot of times we talk about the 3 terms that associate God with no one else. That he's omnipresent. I always get them mixed up. Omnipresent, omnipotent, and the one that's all-powerful. All-knowing, all-powerful, and all the time, right? So he knows what's going to happen. Omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. There we go. So, he knows what's going to happen for always and forever, right? Even though he gives us choice, he knows the choice we'll make. It's usually the wrong one, right? It is. But he's like, here it is. Come get this, right? So, he's saying that the failures of the Amorites are still not yet done. They got a lot more failing to do. Now then, we get into some of that good long word stuff. 17, when the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. What pieces? Remember a minute ago he said, bring me a cow, a heifer, a ram, a pigeon, a turtle dove, and a goat. He's asleep. And he sees this vision in his sleep, his dream, right, of this flaming torch passing between these pieces. That is the Old Testament version of what a covenant of God looks like. In every other reference where you see the vision of God, it's of fire. The only time you don't is when God walks with, and this is one of the things I believe, right? Whenever it says, and God walked with Adam, or and God walked with Elijah, right? I think that's Jesus. I think that's the human form of God walking with him. But whenever you're talking about the omniscience of God, the power of him himself, it's flame. It's always flame. So this torch passes between all these cut animals. Now, he didn't cut the dove and he didn't cut the pigeon, right? But he cut the other things. And he sees this flame going between them. This is God saying, this is what I've said. This is what will be done. There is no question in it. Okay? Everybody good with that? 18 then says this. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your offspring I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. How many kids does Abram have? Right?
One in
Go-
his head.
God's saying to your offspring, to these that you can't count, like you can't count the stars, you can't count because you can't count the dust, I'm going to give them this land.
His offspring. So he can't say.
Right. You can't see any of that, right? That's what 18 says. 19. Oh, my nose is itching. No, 19 does not say that. That's just a Fred thing. Anyway, 19, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadonites. 20, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim. 21, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, the Jebusites. All right, so you got all that? All right, so here's the first question on the test. Name the, no. So once again, here's God saying, I'm doing this covenant. You did everything I told you to do. Reluctantly, probably. He didn't say that, but you brought me these animals. You've slain them like you're supposed to. I've made this covenant with you. I've passed this flame through it. It means I promise this forever, that your descendants will have this land. Off camera, my brother's saying, you might want to say this, that God said, after you failed my first task, I will now promise all of this that I promised you to your descendants instead of to you. As a matter of fact, he says, you'll die before they get it. Which he does, right? Which he does. All right. So, I didn't know if we'd get this far or not, but we're only a half hour into it. Let's go into 16. We may not make it all the way through 16. But here we're going to go start. Yeah. It does, because it always points to the next story, right? So God said to Abram, trust me, I'm going to give you children. Well, here's why. Because you all right? Yeah. She said Abram scared her. Wait, it's about to get better. 16 channel. Chapter 16, verse 1 says, now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. No children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. Stop. Haven't we had enough problems with the people of Egypt in Abram's life already? When Abram decided to not do what God told him to do, where did he go? He went to Egypt. Because there was a famine in Ai. Now, there's a famine in Sarai. Right? No children. So, Sarai has this Egyptian slave servant. Verse 2. And Sarai said to Abram, hey, behold, now the Lord prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. Okay. There's a whole lot of things that can be said here, but here's the one thing I want to say. Sarai said, why don't you get her pregnant?
Probably not like that.
That's exactly what he's saying. I can't have children. Maybe I can have children through her. A surrogate. Right? That's what that says. Verse 3. So, after Abram had lived 10 years. Oh, wait. I skipped something, didn't I? I apologize. I didn't mean to. And children, go into my servant, that it may be I have obtained children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of, not God, but Sarai. Once again, a man listening to his wife will get him in trouble. I'm just saying. It's written down. It had to be, right? So here we go. So verse 3, so after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Canaanites, right? We know that. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. So now Abram has 2 wives. That's the right word. Off camera, one of the people said polygamy. That's the right word. And a lot of people say, oh, cool, 2 wives. And I go, yeah, right, and 2 mother-in-laws. And that usually shuts them up. So, yeah, you know. So, I'm going to stop right there with that verse 3, right? Did you see the rest of that? As his wife. Verse 4 then says this, and he went into Hagar, had relations with her, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt at her mistress, which is Sarai, who told her to go and be her husband's wife. Boom, right away. Jealousy pops out right away, they said. That's exactly right. I got pregnant, you can't. That's the tune that plays in my head, right? So, and Sarai said to Abram, this probably wasn't a good idea. Look what she says. May the wrong done to me be on you. Even though it was my suggestion that this happened, now that I'm getting flack from it, you're going to be responsible. May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave you my servant to embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between not me and her, not you and her, but between you and me. It was my idea, but now I'm mad because it happened just like I thought it would. Except now that servant girl thinks she's better than me because she can have a baby and I can't. Well, maybe if you'd have listened to God, that wouldn't have happened, right? Oh my goodness. And you would think that would be enough, right? But no, watch what happens in 6. But Abram, being the smart man that he is, said to Sarai, behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she, Hagar, fled from her, Sarai. So do you know, now I know that you know, but for those that are just learning this, do you know who this descendant of Abram's through Hagar becomes? This child, we'll catch his name here in a minute, becomes where the descendants of the Muslims come from. And who is it that has the biggest problem with the Jewish people, the Israelites? The Muslims. Sarai just said, may what has been done now but be between that offspring and my offspring. Not what she said, but that's how it's going to come out.
But this is how the Lord said it. A lot of people wouldn't understand it.
Right.
This is the way
Correct. There's no doubt about that. If they made that choice to go down that path, this is what's going to happen. Right? Because they didn't do what God said. Now, let's look at verse 7. Watch what happens. The angel of the Lord... My eyes quit working. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. There it is. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. So there's no question, it's for sure, right? All right. 8. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? Like he doesn't know, right? She said, I am fleeing from my mistress, Sarai. Now the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. Even though they've done something bad, you need to go back and be with her still, right? 10. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. That's the truth. Not only does Abram have descendants that can't be numbered as the stars or as the dust, but so is the descendants of Hagar. 11. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. In other words, you did what you were told to do. I will not hold it against you. I will bless you for being the honored servant. Even though he knows what's going to happen, he's going to use this to his glory. That's what a lot of people don't really catch when they read that verse. 12. He shall be wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. What does that mean, kinsmen? A lot of people think countrymen. That's a good answer. That too. How about this? This child's father is Abram. Abram will have more children. And this child of Hagar's, Ishmael, will be over them, the descendants of Abram through Sarai. That's right. Same father, different mother. Yep. All right. 13. So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, You are a God of seeing. For she said, Truly, here I have seen him who looks after me. I don't know about all of the Quran and all of the Muslim faith. I don't know about it all. I tried to study some of it, and I got physically ill. So I knew I had to stop. But from what I understand, if you read the story of how the Muslims came to be, it follows this story. Exactly. Because it's from Ishmael, who is the child of Abram, Hagar. So a lot of their verses and chapters and things are a direct copy, if you will, of the stories that are in the Bible, right? Correct. That's where a lot of the animosity comes from. But it was foretold that that would happen. Here it is, verse 14. Therefore, the well was called Bir Lahairoi. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. Oh, that was 15. Therefore, that was it. Then 15, and Hagar bore Abram a son. They called him Ishmael. And Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. And the last verse of 16 says, Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. So remember, a few minutes ago I said we didn't know how old he was? Well, right there it tells us. It's 86, so I was close. I said, he's got to be getting close to 90, right? So, God leads Abram up through the valley that becomes Israel to Bethel and Ai, and he doesn't stay there. He builds the temple. The altar in Bethel, or Bethel, some people say. And then because of the famine, they all run to Egypt, and they get in trouble, and God brings them out, and he goes back, and then they have too much stuff, so he sends Lot on his way, and Lot chooses to go to Sodom, which is a well-known bad town. Then he gets captured by these kings, gets incorporated into the prison system that they have. Abram has to go and rescue him. They go back. Now they've got too much stuff, so they send him off. Oh, we've already gone through that part. And Lot goes and goes right back to Sodom, right? Now, like it wasn't enough that all that had happened. God says, I'm going to give you children. Just hang on. And he doesn't. Sarai sends her servant into him, and they have a son, which now will be the cause of conflict with the Israelites for all the time we have left. Right. Right. God's will be done in his time, not in yours. God never said, tomorrow she's going to wake up pregnant. No. That's years now. That's, 11 years since the last time we've heard him say, you're going to have offspring? Wow. Wow. In the story. Yeah, but the conversation off screen is about the story of Moby Dick and the fact that Ishmael was the witch doctor in that. It has nothing to do with this, but yeah, it's that same name, right? Questions? Well, I've got one for you, not to answer, but to think about. Always got to apply this to our lives, right? What has God told you to do that you've tried to figure out a different way to get it done? Every day. Every day. People try to get rich quick schemes, or they run scams to better their lives, or they steal, or they put other people down to try lie, cheat, and steal to make their lives better, when God told them all along, I'll take care of you as long as. Right? It happens to us every day. Every day, every day, every day. All right? Gave him through the vision, what the dream's going to be, then made a covenant, and he still blew it. He still didn't follow through with what God told him to do. That gum thing. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the cameras, and we'll go through our personal private prayer request. If you have any questions or comments about this, please leave them on the video or send me a message to fredmarshall@BibleBikerChurch.com. And if you guys have a desire to come and join us on Wednesday nights, please do. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. These guys are laughing off screen like you wouldn't believe. Mostly at me, but anyway. All right, we'll see you guys Sunday morning when we're in Matthew chapter 8. About what? I've forgotten already. Anyway, it'll be good. It'll be good whatever it is.